So, in today's episode, we have Charles Gellman, who is the CEO of HiDO Health, and I hope I'm getting that correctly without an American or without a British accent, because obviously some of the words are interesting between two nations. But they have a really fascinating product, which helps people maintain their dose basically that dose count in terms of what medications they have to take and everything. And it's a really cool looking device. Looks like it's straight out of Star Wars with the cool features, really smart. It dispenses your medication, and it's also linked to your smartphone, which makes it really, really cool and really useful for people to remember, and also for healthcare professionals to see if people are keeping on top of their dosage. So yeah, without any further delays, welcome to the MedTech 101 podcast, Charles.
Thank you, Rodney, for having me. I'm really excited today to talk a little bit about HiDO and the future of care and how AI-assisted robotics is going to impact society and potentially, alter the future of healthcare.
Well, that's really nice. And before we even get started, my first impressions of you, Charles, was you're a really good salesperson because after we spoke for the first time, I went away thinking that if I could learn one or two things about sales in general from you, from a person who has been in R&D for most of my career, um, I mean, what could you tell us a bit about your background, like career-wise, in terms of how did you get to this point?
Yeah, so my intent was never to actually get into healthcare. I was following the path of my brother, who's an investment banker, and I had a incident that happened where I was misdiagnosed with a kidney stone that actually was ruptured appendicitis. So, due to a medical error, I spent quite a bit of time in the ICU, and that changed my career trajectory. And that is when I solely focused on being in the medical arena. So that's my reason why.
Wow, that's like a life altering experience. And I'm sorry, the money probably isn't as good here as it would have been in investment banking because I got a few friends who work for Goldman Sachs, and every single year towards April, I'm always kind of hesitant to meet up with them around that time because they'll be talking about their bonuses and how their bonuses can be about 100% of their salary. So, but anyways, there's the fulfillment that you get from, MedTech, which I feel is one leg up I have over my uh, companions in investment banking. But and and looking at how you guys have started this in terms of like the prototypes and your journey to market, like how long did that take you? Obviously, I know you worked before and you started Hero Health several years ago. Do you want to tell us about the process that you guys took to get to this point?
Yeah, so really it comes down to bringing on people that are like-minded that want to make an impact, and they can see your vision come together. So we're very fortunate to have exceptional, talented engineers, and I don't want them to overhear too much of this conversation because their egos may become already overly inflated, but we have some talented individuals that really want to see this vision become reality. So it's getting that team together on a like-minded vision to make the impossible possible.
Possible.
So I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by these folks. I worked at a startup before where I met some biomedical engineers and some engineers, not just within California but around the world that really wanted to make an impact, and they just wanted to have um, the they just wanted to be able to put something together that could potentially change the trajectory of care and create health equity for all. And what we've done here is by putting something together where essentially automates the entire process for folks with chronic care medications. What you do is you level the playing field for folks
Yes.
that maybe are not educated about all the different medications, or maybe that their disease state is impairing their cognitive function, so it makes it much more challenging. So the engineers and the team and the people behind this really see the vision and they want to be a part of it. And the way we were able to pull this off is because many of the folks are making substandard wages,
Wow.
wages that they're not getting at or that they potentially could be making at other firms.
Yes.
But they have made a choice to be part of this team, and that's why we're here where we stand today.
Nice. And since you're talking about your team, would you mind just telling the audience how big the company is in terms of what's your guys' manpower out there? And I understand
Mm-hmm.
you're based in
Yeah,
California or California, depending on how you pronounce it. But I'm
yeah.
always gonna
So
be sorry. I say I'm always gonna be getting over this American accent, so it's quite funny to me some of the way the words are pronounced. But yeah, could you just tell us about your company size, your manpower, what your production as well looks like, and so forth.
Yeah, so we're based out of Northern California. Many of your viewers are probably familiar with Silicon Valley. We're out of Sacramento, which is about an
Nice,
hour and a half away from the Bay Area. Our team fluctuates; it's about 12 to 15 in total, and it's mostly comprised with R&D, computer engineers, biomedical engineers. 99% of the team, or 90% of the team, is engineer related, and then the other side of the business, which is me, is on the business side of the house. So, um, yeah, we're pretty excited with what we've been able to do with this team. And in regards to production, we are in the commercial manufacturing process, getting ready to support some large health plans in California.
nice. And in terms of production, do you guys manufacture your products on site, or do you have some sort of like a contract manufacturing agreement in place? How do you guys handle that?
Yeah, so in the office, which I'll show you,
Yes.
we do, there's a series of 3D printers.
Yeah.
There's more right there. So we do a lot of production in the office. You can see some more
Nice.
devices there.
Well,
Um, we do a lot of production in the office, but when you start thinking about thousands of units, that goes to a contract manufacturing facility where they follow, the good manufacturing principles and the required regulatory and compliance that's needed in order to push out a device such as this.
yeah, makes sense. And no, that's really good. And I think it's quite resourceful how you guys are maximizing any office space there. If you could do some stuff there. And so, in terms of markets, because obviously most of my listeners are based in Europe, and they might be wondering where can they get this product? Is it possible for them to get it in Europe, or for now you guys are still only in the US?
Yeah, so right now where it stands, we are a class 1 510K exempt status in the United States, and we do have intellectual property protection. The CE mark for Europe hasn't been approved at this point, but if there was a distributor, a medical supplies distributor that wanted to take a look at this device, and we've spoken with a number of different government organizations, that's something that would be open to.
Oh, nice, nice, and I'm sure. I hope a lot of people are listening right now, like fill your inbox with suggestions, because I think it's a really good product and it's really life changing in a way. But I also feel like as part of your product, it also gives people some sort of autonomy in the sense that they don't really have to rely extensively now on maybe a caregiver. I don't know what the healthcare looks like entirely in the US, but I know there's people who are maybe perhaps of an older generation who need a caregiver to make sure that they take the medications on time, they take them correctly, and this product it has the capability to kind of give them a bit of independence with that, is it? So
Yeah, so what you're speaking to is a problem that is a worldwide challenge.
yes,
Just in the United States, we have over 10,000 people turning 65 or older. Now, there's, many other countries within Europe, within the Middle East and Asia, where, populations are getting older and there's not enough people to help aid these folks live independent and
yeah,
live a good quality life in their later years. So now the question is, they're going to need some type of technology in order to assist them. And that's where HiDO comes in as an AI assisted robotic device. So these people are capable of taking care of themselves if they have the tools to help enable them.
nice. And that's really good. And you know, I think for the audience, it's quite important for them to know the level of problem this HIDO technology can solve. And one of the things that I came across when I was reading up on you guys is you say that if everyone took their prescription as they're told by their doctor, it would reduce the burden on basically the healthcare sector
Mhm.
nationally or obviously globally at this rate. Like, why is it that so? I don't know. What have you thought about that? Because sometimes you just think, oh, it's just a pill. Let me miss it right now. I'll take one later in the evening. How exactly does that affect illness?
Yeah, so most of the folks that are utilizing the services, seeing doctors and nurses in the hospitals are people that have chronic care diseases. So if they have cardiovascular condition, diabetes, some dementia, Alzheimer's, or other related issues. A lot of these can be treated with medications if they're taking according to how they're prescribed. But oftentimes, many of these medications that are prescribed and already paid for by insurance or by government organizations, unfortunately, are not taken by patients. And
Yes.
there's really three levers when it comes to health.
Yes.
One is diet and nutrition. Two is moving around and exercise. And three, if you can't do the first one and two, is medications. But if
Oh,
you've already are challenged with the first two, the third one typically is not done according to how your physician or nurse is telling you. And what happens is that you have a patient self-reported outcome, so a patient telling their doctor that
yeah.
they're taking the medications where in fact they may not actually be telling the truth. So I am not sure how many of your listeners have gone into the
Yeah.
doctor's office, the nurse, and they say, you know what, are you eating right? Are you taking your medications? Are you exercising? So if you're not honest with your physician or
Yes.
your nurse, then what they do is they start titrating up and giving you more and more meds and they add it on. And what that contributes to is adverse events happening with that person. So
Okay.
there's just really not a great way to track whether or not people are taking the medications. And at home, if you are, then what you can do is you can stabilize disease states or potentially you can actually correct them. So with heart failure patients, if you actually take the medications, you can improve your function and get better and
Better.
improve
Yeah.
your quality of life. That's why it's critical to take the medication.
Yes, and that makes sense because sometimes you don't really, put it into perspective in terms of like how much it's important for you to take your medication. And one such illness that I think also people need to take their medications continuously, not skip a day, is things like TB. Because I know the cycle for treating like tuberculosis, it's you have to take your medication for at least 6 months without missing any day. So obviously, most people struggle to keep their New Year resolutions by the end of January, yet alone expecting some sort of consistency. Most people for 6 months. So I guess this is when it comes into play. So then, looking at the process of working with it, like how does if you could describe the working principle of the HiDO, machine. Do you guys have a specific name for it, or because I keep calling it the HiDO
Yeah, so
machine?
HIDO is the device, and HIDO stands for Health Information Data Outcomes.
Nice.
And what we do is we automate the entire process soup to nuts. So what's different about HIDO is that there's an embedded RFID chip in the pill cap, and this
Nice.
knows medication dosage, name, frequency, and count. So when you put it in the device, it auto recognizes all this information. So patients no longer have to DIY, which is do it yourself.
Makes sense.
Everything on the market that you've seen is something similar to this,
Yes.
and that requires patients to do it all. And that's why there's so many different home medication errors that happen because it's all patient dependent.
Well.
What we've done is we've automated that process. So a patient can walk up to the device, they can use their face to unlock it, and it uses Face ID, or they can put a passcode. It dispenses the right medications, the right time, the right frequency, dispenses it. You take your medications from this fancy clear pill cup, you get a recording, and then you're done. And if
Well.
there's any deviation of that, then we know. And because we know, we can take care of you for the first time ever.
Well, and just a quick question then, because when you showed me that little, capsule with it looks like a crate of eggs. That's the first thing I thought about. It kind of reminded me of the same way my grandmother used to take a medication.
Mhm.
But the process of filling up the machine, how does that work? Do you guys
Yeah,
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 how
yeah. I'll just show you.
of course, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, So here's the device right now. It's in sleep mode.
Yes.
Okay. So walk up to the device. Now it's
Yes.
unlocked. So
Yes.
if I wanted to dispense, you could see it. It's ready to dispense
Ah.
meds right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see
So
it now. Yeah. It
I
was
could
at the edge of the
dispense.
camera, but now I can see it. But now I can see
Yeah.
it
So
clearly. Yeah.
if I want to,
Mm.
if we're to load medications, you can see in the
Wow.
back. And
Wow.
all I do is I put the pills, I drop it in the unit,
Wow.
and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to close it. And then when I close it, it says loading medications.
Wow. So
And
it's impressive. It's much simpler than I thought. I was expecting to see some crazy amount of moving parts and stuff behind that. It'd be that's really it seems simple. It's not that difficult.
the reason why we created it, I mean, again, there's a lot of engineering that goes behind this to
Yes,
make it simple and easy, but
of
it's
course.
got to be exceptionally easy because if it's not easier to do than this, nobody will use it.
That's
So
smart.
we have focused on making it easy enough to use and that folks with dementia and Alzheimer's can actually utilize this device. So
Wow.
we're doing research right now with Rush University in Chicago, which is in
Yes.
the United States, and we're able to validate that people with moderate dementia are able to set up our device, dispense medications, and this is without any assistance.
Wow.
And we have a special technology that we developed, which is chaining technology, which is, it forces people down a specific path. So when
Yes.
I went up to the unit, it unlocked and it was ready to dispense medications accordingly. We don't want people to have to click this, do this, program this. You want to make things as easy as possible so then they can just focus on their overall health and well being and not be focused on organizing their medications or whether or not they took the medications. Everything is done for them for a reason.
Now that makes a lot of sense. And actually that was gonna bring me to my next question regarding partnerships. I know you said West Chicago University. Um so I mean, like how long have you guys been running, just to let the audience out there to sort of like give them just a basic timeline of how
Mm-hmm.
new you are to the market, and what are you, and yeah, so we can just start there before I
Yeah,
bombard you with other things. Yeah.
it feels like dog years, but we've been at it since 2018, so
Yes.
5 years. This is version 4, so we are direct for manufacturing. So we are commercializing this project. We've done research at Stanford University in Northern California and research at Rush University, as well as a number of health plans, which we validated the decrease in hospitalization by 80% and
Wow.
the reduction of cost by 67% among these patients.
Wow.
So this has been live. It's been tested on a variety of different disease states, from diabetes to stroke to dementia to heart disease and other heart related functions. And everything has been beyond our expectations at this point in time.
Well, no, that's really good. I'm happy to hear that. And just looking at the device, I couldn't help but think, like, what's the shelf life of the device usually? What's the life expectancy that you have? You expect it for it to run before people can, come back and say, you know what, it's time to get new capsules or whatever? Because I'm sure the chip in the capsule's got life, a life, is sort of like a shelf life.
Yeah, so we've tried to break it. To your point, is
Okay.
how long can this last? So we
Yes.
use off the shelf stepper motors that have done cycles of tens of thousands of times. So at this point, our caps can be reused and redone. We have not yet been able to break any pieces within the device. Um, so at this point, I believe that we've stress tested one of the devices like 100,000 dispenses, which would be like 40 years.
Hmm.
I see us in the future replacing the device probably every 3 to 5 years because
Okay.
technology changes so fast. But the type of technology that we have in this device is pretty far advanced. So
Yes,
uh,
I'm actually quite impressed at the fact that in 5 years you've been able to create 4 updates to this device, which shows me serious R&D work there. And that's because usually in MedTech things tend to take a lot longer than that. So you guys are really pushing and really investing into that, R&D side of things. So now that's really good. And I mean, in terms of like right now, in terms of your orders you've been receiving, would you say that the demand has been going up as people have become more aware of, the HiDO machine, like in the last 5 years? How has that been looking like for you guys?
Oh, yeah, definitely, definitely. I think there's a couple of things that have changed. One is, you start off with a device and you're not exactly sure what will happen when you go live on patients. And then you're able to substantiate your hypothesis. Now, not in our wildest dreams would we expect an 80% decrease in hospitalization, a 67% reduction cost of care. That is something that can completely alter the future of care. In addition to that, folks with chronic disease are able to care for themselves unassisted. So if you
Right.
think about the worldwide shortages of labor, people are able to do things on their own if they have AI assisted robotic technology in their home. You
Yeah.
just have to enable them. So
Makes
there's
sense.
a lot of possibilities, and the growth once folks are starting to uncover what we're doing could be tremendous and
Yes.
far outstretch what we can do within the states. So could there be potential for a European distributor or
Yes.
somebody in Asia or EMEA, etc.? Yes, I think that the potential is far reaching.
Nice. And talking about that in terms of right now, would you be able to just tell us how many you guys manufacture per month or right now? Because obviously, as you've been growing, I'm sure you've started to relook at ways you're gonna have to change production to sort of like scale up to that level to meet the demand, right? So roughly like in a month, how many of these machines do you guys sort of like sell?
Yeah, so I think it depends. Our capacity is based upon the orders. So
Okay.
let's just say, for instance, somebody wanted an order of 5,000 or 10,000 units. That's something that we can fulfill with the contract manufacturer. So it really just depends upon the size and the scale. From
Nice.
a distribution standpoint, if you start looking at, some of the, I guess, some of the challenges within the NIH system within the UK, right? You start thinking about trying to help support those folks at home, and
Yes.
you think about all of those chronic care populations. I don't know
Yeah.
how many millions of people there are there, but yeah, let's just say there is a opportunity to help support those folks. That's something that we would support. It'd probably be from a contract manufacturer
Sure.
in Europe
Makes
versus
sense.
stateside.
No, that makes sense, and I think that's also quite a good way to do it because yesterday I was speaking to one other like business person, and they were telling me about the benefits of using a contract manufacturer because it allows you to sort of like bump up production or reduce production without really taking too much risk upon yourself, of investing a lot into production capital and so forth. And I think that's really good, and that will help you sort of like scale up. And I also get some sense of reassurance because for people in my generation, um, with the declining population, I don't think people in my generation are guaranteed a human healthcare support worker because not a lot of us are having children now, and there's going to be more older people than that. So this is quite nice when you say that this is going to be linked to the AI eventually. So does and because I'm getting excited here, does it have any AI capabilities as it stands right now besides communicating with the phone?
So, so what we're gathering right now are unique data sets.
Okay.
So we capture your image. There's
Yeah.
data points on your face. We know your medications. We can correlate your face, your medications with your blood work, which leads to your outcomes, which is your hospitalizations, readmissions, and ER visits. You have an entire ecosystem. So now combine age, gender, race, location,
Yes.
income, other information together, you can create a blueprint for health. So, are we fully AI enabled? No, we're not.
Okay.
But we have the unique data sets to make something very special happen.
Well, that sounds really good. But a part of me felt a bit of some shivers down my spine a little bit because I was like, we, as much as this is a great technology that's going to be helping people and everything, it's like now we might potentially, especially for me, I might live to see the day where a device makes sure that we take our medication as we're supposed to, which is really great because obviously machines are better than humans. And yeah, if the listeners can hear some background noise with the fans that has been switched on, I will just filter that out. But it's fine, don't worry. If I can't filter it out, just forgive me. I don't wanna cut this point because it's just really exciting. But so Charles, just then coming back to what you said in terms of you guys' capacity in terms of how you're gonna be going forwards, like I'm sure you have like a plan, like on how you guys planning to size up, and besides getting into the European market and into the Asian market, like what are your thoughts on the future? Because this is exciting stuff. It's like cutting edge technology essentially. Are you working
Yeah,
on potentially putting this into like a full-sized robot, that actually walks and gives it to you? Or like, I don't know, it's just my mind is running a little bit wild because it's just exciting what you said. It's just the engineer inside of me. I like to speculate, but whether it's actually feasible or not, it's a conversation for guys who understand the finances. So I don't know, for
yeah.
you, what do you think?
So we have the base for a health ecosystem within the home. So it does have Bluetooth capacity. So you can just think medications are the primary inputs. That's, what I was already talking about before. You have exercise, you have diet, you have medications. Secondary inputs would be your remote patient monitoring. So because it's Bluetooth enabled, now you can marry up your scale, your HRV analysis or your heart rate variability, your blood pressure cuff. So
Wow.
now you almost have a home system to understand your wellness,
Wow.
and you are aware of your wellness and can be educated based upon these parameters that occur. So when I talked a little bit earlier about the blueprint for health,
Hmm.
we are on the cusp of validating what people should be doing based
Wow.
upon the cocktail of medications that have already been clinically approved. But the real world evidence, the real world data that we're collecting is something very unique
Yes.
and no one's ever done before.
Yeah, I've got so many questions. Like, how are you guys going to because essentially from what you're saying is this device will be able to check on your healthcare even if an older person and you, let's say, fall at home and your blood pressure's gone below the level it's supposed to. This could potentially call an ambulance for you. Essentially, that's where you guys are going.
Well, think about it like this,
Yeah.
Rodney. If let's just say we're talking about your father, your mother, and
Yes.
they have elevated blood pressure and their A1Cs, that means their blood glucose level is too high because they are hypertensive diabetic,
Yeah.
right? So if they are actually taking their medications according to how they're prescribed and they're still high
Yeah.
before an event happens, that means their nurse or their doctor can actually raise the dosage because they know exactly what's going on at home.
Well.
Or if they're not taking it, then maybe a notification goes to you. So you can call mom or dad and say, Mom or Dad, what's going on? I want to make sure you're here. I want to make sure you're around for the grandkids if I decide to have them. So I need you to take your medication. So
That's
there's a loop, a communication loop that
yes.
we create that doesn't currently exist because people aren't aware of what's going on at home. And that's why this is so powerful.
Yes, I'm actually sort of like stunned because as much as I did my research reading up to this, I was not you know aware of the level of technology this is capable of. So I don't think your website is doing justice for what your device is actually capable of. And I think looking at that, so it's multi-dimensional. The doctor gets to see the care, or your family members get to see, but like the question everyone is asking, how do you guys look after the data? Because obviously, like here, people tend to be, self-aware of like, no, we don't want, people are tired of, big companies really taking their data from them. But how do you look
Yeah.
after that data, making sure that it doesn't fall into the wrong hands, and this is not hacked, and someone automatically increases someone's dosage or something like that? How do you look
Yeah.
after that?
So the information is encrypted, and we use some of the major players from a security standpoint, and it's according to the compliance and protocols of the United States.
Yes.
So there's a thing called SOC 2 compliance. There's encryption standards and compliance standards that we have to abide by. In regards to folks remotely going into the device, we have a variety of different safeguards that I can't talk to you
Of
directly in a public, but
of course.
there's a variety of ways to make sure that
Mm.
people are safe at home. And then in regards to the amount of data that we're collecting and safeguarding people's health, it's a lot of the formats that people are already using on their phones. So whether or not you have an iPhone or an
Yeah,
Android
I do.
device,
I do have an iPhone.
there's a couple of cameras on here. So
Yes.
walking around, just walking around anywhere. Walk on the
Yes.
street, you walk into the grocery store, you, anywhere. Right now we're on camera. It's everywhere. So
Yes.
I have a feeling that there's images of you and I all over the internet.
Of course. And there was one thing that I recently found. I don't know, like, I found it on TikTok because, most people in my generation tend to find, well, not really my generation, maybe people a little bit younger than me and my generation tend to get some of the news from TikTok, which is
Hmm.
weird because you don't expect, people to be consuming news from 15-second videos because it doesn't paint the whole picture. There's no way you can do that. But there was this little clip that I saw of a guy who showed a website, but particularly in countries like the UK, for instance, there's cameras almost everywhere, and in China, there's cameras everywhere. But the guy was saying in the UK there was a website. Obviously, I shouldn't name it. That you can go on. You put a picture of someone, and then it kind of shows you all the camera or the places where the public cameras took a picture of them. So it's like they can basically see a lot, so people don't have to worry about that in the sense that it's not going to be more than what we're already experiencing. So I guess that's what you're trying to say in terms of the
Well,
security. Mm.
yeah, yeah. Well, this is a little bit different because this is actually, folks' health. They
Mm.
they want to use the device to get better. When you're in the public domain, that's a completely different discussion
Yeah.
where, they're tracking activities. The activities that we're tracking is really about making sure that you're healthy and you sustain life. We're not looking at anything different. We want to
Nice.
improve your health. That is the focus and nothing else.
Yes, which is good. And I mean, as much as this is gonna be, working to improve the health of people and everything. My question is like, how interchangeable is it? Can, let's say, if I had my mom, if my mom had wanted a house, and then maybe she comes and visits me, so she also has wanted mine. Is there, have you guys thought of like sort of like linking two devices together, such as like logging into a computer with different users, but still keeping track? Have you guys thought of that?
Yeah. So there's a couple different ways scenarios. Let's
Mm.
just say that your mom spent you know, a summer with you, and the remainder part of the year she was in a different part of the country, right?
Yeah.
There's two different ways to think about it. One is she could have two different devices, and she could bring her medications, and when she syncs up to the unit will know that it's her, and
Yes.
she pairs her device because it's Bluetooth enabled. So she drop each one of her meds, it would auto recognize, and then she could utilize it that way. Or what if someone's going on vacation? There is a vacation mode on the phone,
Wow.
and then you just put yourself in away mode, and then you know off to vacation you go.
Nice. Okay. And I'm just looking at the time and everything, obviously, but I want to ask you just a few more questions. So, I mean, well, because what I also try to do on this podcast is to also showcase, the human side of CEOs, because I think CEOs are just bombarded each financial quarter by people, whether it's investors and everything in terms of where how profitable we in this quarter, and that's what people need from CEOs most of the time. But like, just talking from an investor's point of view, for people out there as well, with starting companies in MedTech over the last 5 years, how has that been for you guys? How have you been able to source funding? Sort of like get the right people with skills there. I know you already mentioned about paying them well, but what about the investors? How have you guys been sourcing investors for your products? To ensure its continuous development?
Yeah, great question. So we've been very fortunate. We've had support from a variety of folks that have had previous exits and from the very beginning. So from paper and pen, just paper and pen, people believed in us. And then we slowly grew our investor base as we developed more. So we've had four different versions because the first version wasn't perfect
Yes.
and neither was the second one, right? So each iteration and each type of technology that you're able to implement, your capabilities increase. And when your capabilities increase, your data and your validation and your ability to impact people increases. And we've actually captured a lot of this journey over the last 3 years, and it's all in video. So if
Nice.
anyone's interested in seeing the progression, feel free to go on YouTube. We have the full documentary. You can see the patient testimonies. You can see the people that we touch. You can see a little bit about the technology. Not everything, but it definitely gives you a taste of some of the heartache of a startup and the growth and the types of folks that we're touching.
Nice. And there's just one technical question which I realized I forgotten to ask you. I'd gotten lost in the excitement of the technology's capabilities because some of the things you showed me, like it looked a lot simpler than I thought. It's a lot more smarter than I thought. Uh, but in terms of the pills, because obviously I understand just, and this is just like a sort of like engineering question because I'm just curious
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
obviously you have that radio frequency chip that
Yep.
counts the dosage, right? But for this, do you guys have any issues with different types of tablets? Because I know there's some tablets that are capsules, right, which are closed in with a powder inside. Some of them have a liquid inside, or like
Mm-hmm.
some sort of fat lipid, and some of them are solid pills. Does it differentiate all different types of medication with a high confidence level? I don't know. Uh,
Yeah. So
what
we
challenges
we
do you
have
guys
a
face?
yeah we have a quality department, and they have done tens of thousands of dispenses. Now, the,
Yes.
the best medications that we are best utilized for are your solid state molecules. So those are going to be the ones that are not liquid. If they're in a liquid form, that's not something that we do. Or if you're taking an injectable, that's not something that we can dispense from the device. But what we
Okay.
do have on the device that's unique is we do have cameras and we do have a recording. So let's say you were taking an injectable insulin or some type of other a bioagent that you needed, biologic, then you could capture that on camera because a lot of those are, once a week or once every 2 weeks or a month,
Nice.
if need be. But 95% of the medications in the marketplace are solid state medications.
Nice. Now that's really good. And this is sort of like one of my last for a few questions. But one thing I've also wondered is, I mean, like Charles, I think your career has been quite, successful. When I look at it, I'm like, okay, you also worked at at big companies, big pharmaceutical companies, and everything like that, and now you've been running this for the last 5 years. Like, what stops you from just packing your bags and since you live in California and moving to Hawaii and just hanging your feet up and enjoying life on a hammock? Like, what's keeping you from that? What's driving you besides the fact that you were ill by yourself when you were younger? What other motivational things are pushing you to get out of bed every morning?
That's a good question. So I think it depends on the person, but it's living up to your own internal expectations and drive and where I see myself. And where I see myself is in a place where I can impact, potentially millions of people. So when I started this journey, like I said before, I had a medical error that happened to me where I almost lost my life. And I dedicated myself to healthcare technology. And I started with a large pharmaceutical company, Johnson and Johnson, and slowly, learn the industry. And my best talent, or where I wanted to spend the majority of my time, is touching as many lives as possible. So what keeps me from, packing up and, settling in Hawaii or another tropical location is there's a lot that can be done, and the
Nice.
challenges are significant. But I believe that I have a unique skill set as well as a pretty strong network of individuals that can really make the impossible possible with a device such as HiDO. And so I will not stop until we get this out to the people that need this.
Of course, and you're talking billions essentially, because every one of us is gonna be old someday, and we need, if any form of technology can make our lives easier, I guess that's one thing that'll be good. And just the last question as well for for people thinking of starting a company and everything. I mean, like was as I said when I started, one thing that really impressed me about you is I felt like you're one of those guys that say, wouldn't they say, oh, sell me this pen? I felt like you have the skill to do that. But besides that as well, I feel like there's more other skill sets you have. And what could you give in terms of advice, in terms of when, as part of the difficulties you face in a startup, what kind of mindset do you do? Or do you have like a special yoga session every morning at 5 a.m. that you do to keep you calm during to handle the stress? Like, what are you doing as well, to be on top of this, to keep ensuring the company's growth?
Mm-hmm. Well, startup is not for everybody, so you have to realize your skill sets, and wherever you're weak or wherever you need folks to fill in, you got to be able to find those people around you to complete the team. So I'm specialized in a variety of skill sets, but I'm not an engineer. I'm not a biomedical engineer or computer scientist. I understand data science, and commercializing new technology. So I have to surround myself with people that are exceptionally talented and have the same type of motivation that I have in order to make this happen. Being part of a startup is a roller coaster ride. There's ups and downs, and some people will be willing to work 24/7 because it's not work, it's their passion, it's what they want to do. So
Yes.
just like you have this podcast, you started it probably not to monetize, but
Yeah.
to actually grow as a person. So I think it really depends on people's focus and persistence. If they're looking to start a new business or a new venture, 90% of them will fail within the first year. So um, you have to be dedicated, and you got to get people to help support your mission or your vision to make it happen. And if you have that drive and you have that persistence and you have that energy, then anything is possible.
Well, nah, that's really motivating, and I completely agree with you, because just touching on the point, that sometimes you have things that you have to do, but you find yourself having to do it outside of certain times. Because right now, I have a full-time job. I work in R&D, so like 9 to 5, I'm at work, and then the remaining hours of daylight, surrounding those hours, that's the time then I have to dedicate on the podcast and eventually sort of like help it grow and everything. But I mean, like, I've been really honored, to have you on to today, and I'm sure that there's other machines that you guys have in the pipeline as well that might work. We have the same working principle, but maybe look a little bit different as well. So I'm gonna be keeping like tabs to see what you guys are releasing, and yeah, it'd be nice to bring you back on again when you guys yeah, I have like a new product as well coming up. But this is really exciting, and I'll keep tabs on this. I'm gonna add the videos to the description below of this podcast for HiDO Health, for people to see what you guys have. I'm also gonna add your contacts, your website, because website is good, but I think there needs to be more pictures about what it looks like inside, because I was sort of like be whelmed, or I was overwhelmed with excitement to see how simple it was to actually operate. So it's a really good product, and yeah, thank you very much for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, Rodney, thank you for having us on the podcast. I wish you the best with your ventures. We'd love to jump back on in several months. I think next time what we're going to have is we'll have a clinical pharmacist on, so you can actually see the
Yes.
other side, the folks that it's actually impacting in their practice.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.